If you're feeling spicy and want to concoct the perfect pairing for nachos, tacos, and burritos, then you're in luck, because we talked to professional experts to find out just why salsa tastes so much better at a restaurant. When you make salsa at home, you might pick up whatever tomatoes you can find at the store and use pickled jalapenos that have been languishing at the back of your fridge for months. But restaurants tend to utilize high-quality ingredients, and this attention to sourcing can make all the difference. According to Antonio Tavio, the chef de cuisine at Tamayo in Denver, using ripe tomatoes, fresh chiles, and just picked herbs ensures that each bite is bursting with flavor. Quality ingredients bring out the natural flavors, making the salsa more authentic and enjoyable. Alex Diaz, the chef at Sor Inez in Philadelphia, very much agrees, as he also maintains that choosing quality ingredients is key to quality salsa. So rather than using watery grocery store tomatoes, hit up your local farmer's market for quality heirloom varieties. Or if you have a Mexican market in your area, look there for quality chiles or ingredients like tomatillos. While using the freshest ingredients possible is ideal, it may not always be possible. Even at restaurants, there may be times of the year when produce isn't at its finest, or a delivery might come in with watery tomatoes and chefs need to pivot. So Alex Diaz recommends, if access to fresh seasonal produce is challenging, you can char the ingredients to help bring out their flavor profiles. Charring doesn't have to be limited to improving poor quality ingredients. In fact, it's a method restaurants often use for certain salsa types and can complement meats like carne asada quite well. Roasting and charring generally intensify the flavors of ingredients, and the resulting salsa tastes rich and smoky rather than fresh and light. If this sounds like your favorite restaurant salsa, you can roast or broil veggies to make your own intense variety. This not only concentrates the flavors, making the ingredients richer and sweeter, but as browning occurs, it brings out extra flavor compounds. One of the reasons why restaurant salsa is so good is that professional chefs know how to make a wide range of varieties. Salsa simply means sauce in Spanish, and some traditional Mexican salsas are quite different from what you might imagine. For instance, they might contain avocado and tomatillos, or they could feature red onions as the main ingredient. As Antonio Tavio notes, some of the basics include salsa roja, which is made with ripe tomatoes, onions, garlic, and chiles. Then there's salsa verde, typically made with tomatillos and green chiles like jalapenos or serranos. There are cooked salsas, and then there are also boiled salsas, the latter of which are generally creamier because of emulsification. And then there are raw salsas, like pico de gallo.
Taste the pico de gallo of a man's heart.
One reason that homemade salsa might not be reaching the heights of your restaurant favorites could be because you aren't paying enough attention to acidic ingredients, like lime or vinegar. As Antonio Tavio advises, acidity is crucial in balancing the flavors and adding brightness to the salsa. Many home cooks might not realize how much acidity can elevate a salsa. It cuts through the richness of other ingredients and enhances the overall flavor, making the salsa more refreshing and lively. However, not every chef believes that lime or vinegar are necessary in salsa, with some exceptions. As Alex Diaz notes, in Mexico, the only salsas we would add lime to are salsa verde or guacamole. Diaz thinks that some recipes began using limes or acidic ingredients to help make them more shelf-stable, but at Sor Inez, he doesn't add acidic components to the salsa. In general, salsa does need acidity, but the tomatoes in a red salsa are already acidic. If you're looking to improve your homemade version, you might want to experiment with different levels of acidity to find the right balance. You might try to limit the amount of salt you use at home, but this common ingredient does play an important role in the kitchen. It elevates flavors by intensifying the taste of other ingredients, like tomatoes and onions. In a commercial kitchen, chefs carefully balance salt and know just how much to add to make it taste great. As Antonio Tavio reveals, salt is a key ingredient in salsa. It enhances the natural flavors and brings everything together. According to Tavio, the perfect amount of salt highlights the sweetness of the tomatoes, the kick of the chiles, and the brightness of the herbs. Alex Diaz agrees, as he notes, the key is to use kosher salt, which isn't as processed, so it doesn't have a harsh bite like table salt does. You'll find oil in some restaurant salsas, which might differ from homemade or store-bought varieties. Although oil isn't a necessary ingredient in all salsas, it can make a huge difference in certain varieties. As Alex Diaz details, we don't use oil or fats in our salsa unless it's a salsa macha. Salsa macha is an oil-based salsa made with chile de árbol and is known for its spice level. The flavor is affected by the specific oil that you use. For Diaz's salsa macha, he opts for avocado oil. Antonio Tavio generally avoids oil in traditional flavors because it can change their purity. But he also notes, in some roasted or cooked salsas, a little oil can help to mellow out the heat and bring a smooth texture. The richness of oil balances out the acidity in certain recipes, so you might not need oil in your salsa, but you shouldn't shy away from using it where it's called for.
Well, they look better when they're oiled up.
Another common mistake when making homemade salsa is failing to balance the flavors, but achieving equilibrium is something that professional chefs are trained in. It's often learned through trial and error since various factors can impact it. You can't just follow a recipe and expect the same results or perfect balance every time. As Antonio Tavio advises, balancing flavors in salsa is an art. You need to consider the sweetness of the tomatoes, the heat from the chiles, the acidity from the lime, and the freshness of the herbs. But all of these elements can vary, as some tomatoes are sweeter than others and some limes are more acidic. Therefore, finding the right balance requires tweaking every time, as well as someone who knows what they're doing. As Tavio notes, sometimes adding a touch of sugar or a little extra lime juice can make all the difference. Balance also includes considering ingredient ratios so that one doesn't overpower the rest. As an example, Alex Diaz shares, "A mistake I've seen home chefs make is using too many peppers in their salsa. One trick is to use peppers as 20% of the salsa." Chefs at Mexican restaurants almost always use fresh herbs in their salsa. Dried counterparts can be useful in some dishes, but don't taste exactly the same and can't be used interchangeably. Antonio Tavio is definitely someone who prefers fresh herbs over dried ones. As he put it, fresh herbs bring a vibrant, aromatic quality to the salsa that dried herbs simply can't match. Cilantro in particular should always be fresh. And as Alex Diaz explains, dried herbs are more potent, ounce for ounce, meaning that you can't just switch fresh herbs for dried ones in a recipe and expect the same results. Also, fresh herbs are also more easily distributed throughout a salsa. When making salsa at home, you might be tempted to use whatever chiles you can get your hands on at the supermarket. Similarly, many commercial producers will use anything that's cheap to give their product a kick. A good restaurant, however, will utilize their hot peppers with a lot more consideration. As Antonio Tavio revealed to Mashed, "I use a variety of chiles depending on the salsa, from jalapenos and serranos to habaneros and guajillos. The source is very important, as chiles grown in the right conditions have a more consistent flavor and heat level." Tavio prefers to source his chiles from regions like Oaxaca or Puebla, which are known for their quality. Unsurprisingly, Alex Diaz is also picky about his chili peppers. As he reveals, "We mainly use serrano peppers in our salsas, but if you prefer a milder spice, use jalapenos." He suggests shopping for hot peppers at Mexican grocery stores if you can't get any that are grown in your region. These will usually come directly from Mexico, where peppers are in season all year.
That smells like a pepper inferno up in this piece.
Sometimes salsa is disappointing because there's too much of a bite from raw ingredients with a strong taste, specifically garlic and onion. Fortunately, there are a few chef-approved tips to mellow them out so that you can enjoy raw salsas without suffering major garlic breath. According to Antonio Tavio, one trick is to soak the chopped onions in cold water for a few minutes before adding them to the salsa. This removes some of the harshness and makes the onion flavor more subtle. He also suggests roasting garlic before adding it to the salsa so as to mellow out the sharpness and achieve a flavor that's sweeter and more complex. You could also adjust the type of salsa you make if you don't like overly pungent garlic or onions. Alex Diaz also suggests possibly grilling or oven roasting the salsa. Ultimately, it all comes down to the fact that heat will tame the intensity of these ingredients. There's one important step that's all too easy to skip when making salsa: resting. At most high-quality restaurants, there's some essential time between making salsa and serving it. As Antonio Tavio explains, this allows the flavors to meld together and develop a deeper, more complex taste. As the salsa rests, the flavor compounds mix and mingle, so it tastes better with a more even blend of ingredients across every bite. All you need to do to achieve this is make the salsa ahead of time. If you're in a pinch, make it before you start on any of the other components of your meal. Although if you have the time, you can make it a few hours or even a day or two in advance.
Relax. Take your time.
They say a bad worker blames their tools, but when it comes right down to it, using the equipment you have in your home kitchen probably won't give you the same results as the proper gear that's typically found at a restaurant. For example, there's the molcajete, which is a traditional Mexican mortar and pestle that's used to grind the ingredients. As Antonio Tavio reveals, it can add a special touch that enhances the overall flavor and texture. In contrast, most people making salsa at home are probably going to use a blender or food processor, but a molcajete gives you more control over how chunky or smooth it turns out. It's harder to achieve that level of finesse with a food processor. You also release more flavor compounds using a mortar and pestle, so the finished result will be tastier overall. We've already mentioned the importance of balance, but great chefs take things even further. Rather than just making sure that the salsa is balanced in and of itself, they'll also check how it pairs with whatever it's being served with. Antonio Tavio notes that you should taste your salsa along with the food that it's going to be served with, while adding, sometimes a salsa might taste perfect on its own, but when paired with food, it might need a little more salt or lime juice. Simply put, if you want the restaurant-quality salsa of your dreams, you have to go beyond basic balance and look at the whole picture. So consider what you're serving and adjust as necessary. For instance, if you're eating salsa tortilla chips, you can probably go light on the salt. Ideally, you should taste all the components together before you serve the dish, and then make changes to the salsa as needed.